Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 76. We are back. I think this is going out early February, and we have a very special guest joining us, a returning guest joining us, who I will introduce you to in a minute. But first of all, if I introduce you to the usual hosts, we are back with a full repertoire of hosts today following the last show. So welcome, Mr. Peter Lamp from Bath. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. And I'm very excited about this because I missed the last one with this guy. It was my one day I've had to cancel sessions ever. So my one day off work in 8 years.
Oh,
because I couldn't get out of bed. It was weird. It was weird. And I had to cancel everything. And then the next day I was okay. It was very odd.
Okay, well, you're here now.
So I'm good. That's my 100% record gone. I'm gutted.
And Mr. Paul Bassett in Putney, London. How are you doing?
Not bad. I'm basically, you remember the old 1980s joysticks with auto fire?
Yes.
I'm a bit like that. I'm a bit like that with mute because I've got a screaming child in the background. So I'm just kind of muting on and off depending on the level of screaming. It's what happens when you've got a 2-year-old.
That's okay. Just keep yourself muted, and when you want to chime in, just unmute yourself.
I'm hoping Zoom have come up with some new software that cuts out all extraneous noise apart from my deep and charismatic voice.
Okay. And we first met this guest back on episode 43. So it's kind of probably middle of last year, I think. I'm just trying to kind of work out when that would be. We are episode 76 today. If you haven't listened to the original episode, our guest today is Mr. Dave Whitley, Iron Tamer. Hello again, Dave.
Hello. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
So if you haven't listened to the original episode, go back. It's episode 43. It's called The Mental Side to Physical Strength. Okay. And we've got Dave back on today, and we're going to talk about, we've got a couple of I suppose, starter questions, if you like, or themes that we've kind of discussed that we're going to talk about today. Also, we mentioned at the end of the podcast last time the very, very sad passing of Bud Jeffries recently, which just happened a few days ago when we were recording this. Dave was very close friends with Bud, so we will be discussing a little bit about Bud today, and Dave will be sharing some stuff and intertwining that with what we talk about today, and also some other bits to do with Wim Hof training, which cold exposure, breathing, that sort of thing. But we're going to kind of, like we normally do, we're going to have a kind of fairly free-flowing conversation. We've got an idea where we may go, but we never quite know where we're going to end up. So that's the way we like it here. So welcome, Dave. What's been going on with you since last time we spoke, which was, like I say, probably between 6 months and 9 months ago, something like that?
Yeah, I think it was back toward the end of last summer. What's been going on with me? Lots of fun stuff. I have a 3-year-old son. He's turned 3 since the last time that we spoke. And so I understand what you're saying about having to hit the mute button once in a while. Fortunately, my office is in the basement of my house, so he's upstairs blundering around. I don't know if you can hear him stomping and carrying on, but he's doing stuff up there. I'm getting a phone call. Let me decline the phone call. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
And just been working on working with my coaching clients online for Superhuman You coaching. I did a couple of shows since the last time we spoke. I did 2 shows in 2021, and which in 2020 I did none because the whole year got canceled for the obvious reasons. But had fun doing that, and just been working on those things. And then, of course, the past 5-6, what was it, Thursday? The past 6 days have been pretty well consumed with coming to grips with the term that I'm never going to be able to text or call my friend again, which is painful because he was a big part of my life. He was no pun intended, because he was a big man too. But he, For anyone who doesn't know the whole story, I met Bud when in like 2005, I think, at a very early incarnation of maybe it's 2004, very early incarnation of the U.S. attempts at Girevoy sport before we found out that Russians had been doing it for years. And Bud and I actually both competed in that same event, and both of us did pretty miserably because we didn't know what the hell we were doing. But I met him then, became friends with him, and interviewed him for a project that I was doing in 2006 or so, where this is before podcasts. I would do interviews and then mail out physical CDs to the people on the lists. And I interviewed Bud, and through that, Bud said, somebody need to get on the show is Dennis Rogers. So Bud introduced me to Dennis Rogers, effectively setting me with both feet, eyes forward on the path of becoming the performing strongman that I am now. And his impact and influence on me personally and my career as a coach and as a performer and as a speaker and as an author cannot be underestimated. So greatly missing him these past few days.
Yeah, like I said, I think I said just before we came on air, it was so strange that we were talking about Bud just back end of last week, and someone had approached us and said, you really got to get Bud on the podcast, and we were just at the stage of reaching out to him again, and then heard the news over the weekend. So, for those people we're going out in England. I know we have lots of listeners in, Australia, America, Canada, all over. But how would you describe Bud and what, I know it's so difficult because he did so much, as we were discussing before we came on, but how would you describe Bud and what he did to someone who didn't know him at the moment? Because I was speaking to a lady earlier, I was training to a lady in her 60s, and I said, have you ever heard of Bud Jeffries? And she said, no. And I sort of tried to kind of say, what he was like from what I knew, but how would you describe Bud to someone who didn't know him and had never seen him on social media or any of his feats of strength?
I would say that he was awesomeness personified. It really comes down to that, because everything that he did with such an amazing passion and so effectively, and he was such a creative thinker on everything that he did. I would simply say he was awesomeness personified, and then I would just pull up some videos of some of the silly things that he would do and show the person, because I don't think I can adequately describe. How do you adequately describe a 300-pound man standing in a one-arm handstand, driving a nail through a board and popping a balloon, and then doing a shot of whiskey right after that? It's I posted a photo on my personal Facebook of him that I think sums the whole thing up. It's him wearing nothing but a kilt and a tie, holding a cup of coffee, juggling a kettlebell that's on fire.
Yeah, I saw that. It was brilliant. And I think you said something like, I think there was something that said something, you may be awesome, but you'll never be, Bud dressed like this, doing this awesome. It was. Yeah.
It's like a meme for like what it's like to take a child to school. You got your cup of coffee, everything's going wrong, you're trying to hold it together.
What I liked as well, like you say, he was a 300-pound man, but he'd stand there with his holding his toes with his hands on one leg, with his leg up here, wouldn't he, as well? Kind of, because he was really flexible as well. So he just broke the mold, didn't he? Everything was completely just outrageous.
Yeah, he coined the term several years ago of being Gazellosaurus Rex. He wanted to be as powerful as a T-Rex and as what's the right word?
Kind of
graceful,
supple and
as graceful as a gazelle, and he was those things.
I think I saw Paul McElroy posted something about him, and he said Pavel had called him the bumblebee of strength or something like that, because he just defied all physics. Because bumblebees aren't meant to fly, meant to be able to fly, are they? So
right,
absolutely amazing.
Deary me. Yep. So Dave, in terms of some of the things that we've been discussing on the podcast recently, and things that when we reconnected with you in the last few weeks, and we arranged for you to come back on, I'd kind of said that there was a few things that we've been discussing and members and clients have been discussing with us, and that you might be able to kind of shed your your perspective and your wisdom on. and we can tie that in and go in any direction we want with it. So things like setting goals and targets that are linked to your own personal values, beliefs, and priorities, as opposed to following the crowd or aiming for things that you feel should be moving towards based on your friends, your family, social media pressures. Because what I find, I know it's a challenge for me, and it's a challenge for lots of people that I speak to, is that when they are on this kind of, you mentioned TikTok and Instagram and these things, you constantly see people, this person's really strong, this person's really fit, this person's really lean, this person's really skillful, this person's really agile. And people kind of, I know Dan John calls it, the art of keeping the goal the goal. You can kind of feel that you're being pulled in many different directions, but how do you actually choose something that deeply identifies with you and that is meaningful to you as well, and not just, following the crowd and trying to do things for maybe purposes that aren't true to your identity? I mean, I know it's a big question. It's a huge thing to, but what do you think about
that? Yeah, I can go for a while on this, and I think, and I'm really glad that this is one of the questions that we're talking about, and it's very appropriate because Bud was a master of this. If we're going to reference back to Bud Jeffries, he was absolutely a master of not giving a bleep.
You can swear. You can swear on here if you want.
Whatever you like.
Okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't one of those kind of places that you're not supposed to say fuck in front of the KIDS. Yeah, that Bud just he did his thing, and that's the thing that he did, and he was a true master of that. And if you look at him, and you're unaware, if you're like going by the Instagram filter of what fitness should be, Bud didn't have a six-pack. He didn't have, a perfectly coiffed beard and stylish clothes and all of that kind of stuff when he was doing the thing. So, but that was by design. That was Bud being who he was. He did not want to be that kind of person. He understood where he was coming from, and he understood what he wanted to be, which was to be at an exceptionally high level at a number of different things, which we're very often told not only not to attempt to do, but that it's not possible. It's not possible for someone to, swing a 24 kilo kettlebell for 1,000 reps and then go press 150 pound kettlebell overhead immediately after, and then drop into the splits. But a guy like Bud could do that. And so that kind of inspiration is something that I took to heart very early on in my association with him and a few other strongmen who think the same way. And because of that, it's always been pretty easy for me to navigate back to what is my true purpose in all this stuff. And that's what it comes down to, is what is your purpose in setting the goal in the first place? If you say something like, oh, I want to get in great shape, that doesn't mean anything. It's like saying, I want to travel, or I want to have a lot of money. It's a concept, it's an idea, but it doesn't really mean anything specific until the individual gets specific with it. So if you're going to set a goal that is linked to your personal priorities and your personal values and your personal beliefs, the obvious first step is to define what your values and beliefs and priorities are. And I think that is the big place that it's very easy to get tripped up before you even, before you even suit up to go out on the field to play the game. You have to have that in place. Otherwise, you're going out ill prepared. Where want to go? What are your priorities? What are your beliefs? What are your values? And I encourage people to actually sit down and write out, this is what I believe. And if I'm working with you in a coaching situation like that, then I will break things down into categories like family or health and fitness and finances and career and impact on the world, all of that kind of stuff. And if we start listing those things out, that's awesome. Now we can start to see, what do I really believe versus what do I think I'm supposed to believe? Because if I write down something and it doesn't resonate with me, then it's not really my belief. It's something that someone has told me I should believe, or it's something that I feel like I should live up to based on my interaction with the rest of the world, either in person in 3D or via social media or whatever, right? And so getting clear on what it really means, what's really important, is huge. What I encourage people to do, if they're tripped up on that, is list out all of the stuff that you don't want Because how often any fitness professionals that are in the crowd of listeners that we're talking to, how often does someone come in and you say, okay, what do you want to accomplish in here? Well, I don't want to be fat anymore. I don't want to be weak anymore. I don't want to have pain in my joints when I move anymore. I don't want to keep eating this way. You've just listed off a bunch of stuff that you don't want. You haven't told me anything that you do want, except you kind of have, because what you don't want reveals to me what you do want. But if you're so wrapped up in these are the things that I don't want, these are the things that I want to change, I can't stand living with these things in my life anymore. That's a good insight, but it's not any direction. It's not taking any active direction to get away from it. You understand what I mean? Because
I used to work with people who were, I'm sure we've all worked with middle managers or people who, play a role in a project or something like that, and their sole goal seems to be being able to say no to something rather than contributing, some kind of active kind of direction to the project or whatever you're doing, and that's not really, they think it's taking charge of things, but it's not.
Right So through, first of all, listing out things that we don't want, we can determine what we do want. I actually have a very involved process that I do with my coaching clients where we list these things out, and then we take the thing that you say you don't want and on another piece of paper rewrite it 180 degrees from what it actually, from where you're starting, right? So let's say, for example, we're talking about money, right? I don't want to be broke anymore. Okay, great. All of your attention's going on being broke. What do you think you're going to get? Because whatever you plant and water in your mind is what you're going to get more of. So if you're just continually watering this worry about finances, then you're going to grow more lack of finances, if that makes sense. So we rewrite that. That's a tough one for me to say. We rewrite that sentence. I don't know if you remember, when I was a kid, I had that stutter. So there it is. And that kid's still in me, but I just don't let him run the show anymore. I just tell him it's okay. I got this. Rewrite it as its polar opposite. So what would I don't want to be broke anymore? It would be, I want to be wealthy, or I want to have more than enough money to do anything that I want to do. And those are good broad concepts. And then from there, we can start to get more specific about it, because having plenty of money means two completely different things to two different people, right? To be to put it in context with some sort of a physical culture or training aspect, to get in shape or to be stronger or any of those kinds of things, the average person who's never done anything, that means something very different to them than it does someone like Bud Jeffries, who was high level at all of those things. So that's the first thing, is figuring out exactly what you want. And then we can look at that list and we can look at what are our personal values and what are our personal beliefs. Well, if you haven't written those down, then you don't know what they are, really. You kind of have an idea, but it's kind of like, it's kind of like not reconciling your checkbook every month and then wondering why you're broke, because you don't know what you're doing. You don't know where your money's going. Same sort of thing on a much more amplified scale with your belief system. If you believe, okay, I really want to be strong and get in shape, but then the other side is, I really don't want to work hard and I hate going to the gym and I love eating junk food and I hate eating healthy foods, the belief will win over the desire every single time, because the belief acts as a guidance system, like a GPS or an automatic pilot on an airplane. And if you go off course consciously, willfully, and attempt to willpower your way to a destination that is not programmed in to your autopilot or your GPS, you will continually get rerouted as soon as you take your attention off of this concentrated, focused exercise of will. And will is a finite resource. You can only operate at maximum willpower toward a given end at any given time. Or for a given time. I kind of tripped over the words, but you understand what I mean. You can't sustain that. So eventually your beliefs and your self-image, your self-concept are going to take the reins back over and guide you back to where you came from. Case in point, we've talked about finances and we've talked about physical training. let's use weight loss as a specific example on that. How many people do we know as from being in the fitness business who have gained and lost the same 10 or 20 kilos multiple times? Mm-hmm. Or they come in and they lose 10 or 15 kilos, and then a year later, they're 30 kilos heavier than they were when they started, right? Their self-image is not that of a person who is healthy and at that weight and doing well. Their self-image is that of the person who is overweight and out of shape and at risk for all of the stuff that goes along with that. Mm-hmm. Finance is the same way. Every few years here in the States, there's a story that'll pop up of someone who lives in a very low income area who's pretty well impoverished that'll win a lottery of several $1 million. And then a year later, they're in worse position than they were financially before they won the lottery. What's going on with that? Their self-image, their belief system is rooted in lack of deserving money and rooted in poverty and rooted in the old money is evil kind of stuff, right? And so if you want to be a good person and you want to be rich, but you also believe that money is evil, you'll find a way to mess that up for yourself. So what I like to do is take those things and figure out how we can reprogram the belief system to match up with the goal. And so if the goal is an indication of where we want to be, and we have a belief system that's in conflict with that, we must address that belief system first. And when we do that, not by convincing ourselves that we are different than we believe ourselves to be through force, but rather by imagining ourselves to be the person that we want to be over and over and over again to impress it on the subconscious, until the subconscious, which doesn't know the difference between something that's happening in a 3D world and something that's vividly imagined, eventually accepts it as, oh, okay, these are the new coordinates for my my final destination. We'll start acting accordingly.
How long does that take? I mean, I know this is another broad question, but if you were going to try to convince your belief system and this vision of yourself as something different than you are currently, and then you were going to start taking actions towards becoming that person, and you'd like you say, without just relying on willpower alone, because you are actually driving towards that thing. Is that a process that can happen quickly, or is this a process of convincing the belief system? It's almost in tangent. It sounds like, I know you know Paul McElroy and things, this kind of expanding the comfort zone and gradually convincing the central nervous system to allow you to be stronger. Is it kind of similar to that kind of thing?
It's absolutely similar to that. It's the first step of believing something that goes against what you currently believe is to be made aware of it. The next step is to believe that it's possible for someone else to do it, or believe that it's possible for it to be done. And then the next step after that is understanding how to convince yourself that not only is it possible, and not only can someone else do it, but I could do it too. Once you start to do that, you put a little crack in that faulty belief system, and you will start looking for ways to express that, and not like consciously looking for it. You'll be compelled to do it. That's the big thing. To use the fitness example, the person who says, I hate going to the gym, I love eating junk food, and all of the things that are associated with that, they can force themselves to go through a 12-week or 16-week transformation process and get very good results out of it. And then at the end of it, no real change occurs, and they lapse back into whatever they were doing before that puts them back in the same position. The other way that works is the person goes through that transformational process because they flipped a switch in their mind at the beginning. This is who I'm going to become, and that's who I am now. And my body just has to catch up with me. And then, of course, the third way of doing that is the person who's not convinced starts the program, and somewhere along the way, the program and their ability to get up every day and go do the thing and eat the foods and all of that sort of stuff convinces them, hey, I'm actually able to do this. This is who I'm becoming. I like this person. So those are really the three different possibilities there. So you got a 2 out of 3 chance of winning, really.
I love that, because there's a quote that one of my ex-coaches used to use. And I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it was how a belief is a thought that your behavior conforms to. I don't know if thought's the right word, but no matter what you want or you think you want, your behavior conforms to that specific thing, doesn't it? So like you say, you believe you don't want to go to you hate the gym and you want to eat junk food, but you're going to get in shape. If that's your belief, you're going to conform to that anyway. Your behavior is going to make you not want to go to the gym and not be that person. So that's why, I like to think of the job of coaches is to make that person, like you say, change their belief system. Well, not change their belief system, make them believe what they want can be achievable. So it's kind of like trying to make somebody enjoy the process, isn't it? If you can.
Absolutely. And the way that I articulate that very thought is my job as a coach or as a mentor, as a guide, whatever you want to call it, is there's many aspects to it, but at the root of it, one of the primary things is for me to give you permission to succeed. And that's not something that I came up with. That was a client that I trained or worked with several years ago. She had gone to various different places for physical stuff and also for mental stuff. She'd done like traditional therapy and all that. And the reason that everything worked when she worked with me wasn't because I'm so great, but it was because my approach as a coach wasn't to try to shame her into improving. It was, I encouraged her to the point that she gave herself permission to get better. She stopped comparing herself to all these external things and just decided, what kind of house do I want to build, and built that house rather than looking at everybody else's houses and thinking, well, they've got 3 bathrooms and they've got 2 and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know what to do.
I've had an exact same situation with a client recently. It's been quite an amazing thing to watch. About 6 months ago, I sat down with this individual and she was almost kind of like just telling me, look, Paul, you're going to take me on and I'm going to do exactly what I always do. I'm going to negotiate with you in sessions. And sometimes I'm just going to refuse to do the work. And this is what I've done with other clients. But there was something about her, which is, I could tell she was quite fun. And I knew that she was just trying to put me off. So in the end, I said, look, just sign up. We'll do it. Give it a go. I'll guarantee the program. You can't lose. And she signed up. It's funny because she started to initially went into that kind of that way of thinking, but then I didn't kind of spend too much time on it. I just said, look, if you want to lift heavy or light or whatever you want to do, just try your best. And I just took a bit of pressure off her shoulders. And as you said, I like that word, permission. She suddenly started seeing gave herself permission to start being the person she wants to be. The funny thing is now, like I got a phone call just before Christmas saying she went from twice a week to signing up for the amazing 12 5 days a week at 6 a.m. And she said she'd never want to train in the morning and she was always training in the evening. And here she is doing 6 a.m. every day for the next 3 months. She starts next week. So it's going to be exciting.
That's amazing. I love that. Yeah. And it's really obvious when the switch flips on somebody because they stop acting like the person that you knew and start acting like this new person that they want to be. And they're not even aware of it in a lot of cases. So that's amazing.
I've had recently as well. There was a lady who comes to me who, she was having a little bit of trouble, like one side on her lower back, and she, so I gave her some stuff to do at home, just simple stuff, which I like to give to people, just like stand against the wall and lift your leg up, and that'll get rid of it. And then, so she turns up 4 days later. Have you been doing that? Yeah. How does your back feel? It's still a bit sore and all that. Is it better than it was Monday? Oh yeah, it's way better than it was Monday. I'm like, why do you start with the how it feels now? Why don't you start with the actually it's improved? Because then, if you're doing something and it's working, carry on doing it. If it's not working, let's take a different approach, So it's yeah. I think that's a tendency for when you start something that you think you're not able to achieve. You start looking for the negatives, don't you? Rather than saying, right, what's improved today? What's improved this week? What's improved since yesterday?
Absolutely.
And those
Why
are the
do you think that is? I was about to say, Dave, I'd be interested in your insight into with clients, and I think people just in general, whether it's in work contexts, it would probably be the same, which is people start talking about like, I've been bad, I've been this. And I wonder what the processing is that brings out that kind of language, particularly in health. I don't know if how you approach that kind of thing, because like Peter says, that often people will start with this negative perspective on any action in terms of their health, their diet, their exercise. I'm not strong enough. This side is weak. I've been bad. I've eaten wrong foods, bad foods. I mean, what's your take on that kind of language and that perspective?
Well, ultimately, it comes down to the mental conditioning and the mental programming that each of us carries around. We, from birth until about age 6 or 7, our mind, our brain, the physical organ of our brain, not just our mind, because our mind is not our brain. A lot of us will think, when I say the word mind, we'll get an image of the brain, but the brain is not the mind, because when you die, your brain remains, but you and your mind exit the physical structure, right? So, but the brain itself is the interface between the body that I'm walking around in and the thoughts that I have that are floating around out there, wherever they are, right? And so from birth until about 6 or 7 years old, our brains operate primarily in a theta brainwave state, which is in adults, it's that same state like right before you fall asleep, but you're still awake enough to be aware of what's going on. You haven't drifted off into dreamland. You feel like you could move your body, but you also feel like you're not in your body anymore. I mean, we've all experienced that half asleep thing. That's the goal of meditation. That's the goal of hypnosis, is to get into that state so that we can strip away the superfluous external stuff and like really get in touch with who we truly are. Part of the wonder of the theta brainwave state is the ability to learn at a rapid rate. And by learning, I mean impressing thoughts and concepts and ideas and facts onto the subconscious mind. So when we're very young, we're in that state almost all the time. Anyone with young children, please pay attention to this, because this is kind of, my son just turned 3 a couple of months ago, and this has started to, like, everywhere I look, this is landing in my lap more often and more often about how to raise an exceptional child. Well, you must become an exceptional parent. And the way to become an exceptional parent is to break the cycle of all of the stuff that you can possibly do that was programmed into you that doesn't serve you and will not serve your child. And, you know, we can get angry at our parents and our relatives and our school teachers and our friends who implanted these ideas into us when we were little kids, all we want to, but it doesn't change anything until we change something ourselves. We must understand that the people who programmed us when we were little did the best they could with the level of awareness and understanding of the world and themselves at the time. And if it messed us up, we have to let that go. Otherwise, we're carrying it around. And sometimes we carry around things that are to our detriment, that were very much for our survival at one point. I tell a story sometimes about an egg, you know, a bird's egg, while the embryo is developing in the fertilized egg, keeps that embryo alive and allows it to develop until it hatches out. It's very important. And if you crack that egg open, that shell, too soon, the developing embryo or baby bird will die. But if the bird hatches out of that egg and then insists on carrying that egg around with it for the rest of its life, because it protected me once, I need it, it's my survival thing, and the bird's actually dragging it around, it will wind up being much more likely to get eaten by a predator because it can't fly as easily, or it won't let go of the thing that kept it alive at one point. And we as humans are a lot like that, but in a much deeper way, with our belief systems, our coping skills, with the way that we talk to each other, and the way that we talk to ourselves. We all carry around concepts and ideas in our belief systems that not only don't serve us, but work directly against us. The first step is becoming aware of that fact. The next step is identifying and then reprogramming them. And I refer to that entire glob of information as a mental diet. If we look at physical nutrition, we have let's say that we decide we want to look or perform in a particular way based on our physical training, right? Or lack of physical training. You know, some people don't want to train; they just want to change the way they eat and lose weight. That's fine. That's great. But let's say that you're, looking to make weight and get in shape for some sort of a competition, right? There's a couple of different approaches you can take nutritionally with that. You can just you feel like eating at any given time and hope for the best, or you can structure what you're consuming so that it lines up with the end result that you want to achieve, and that your nutrition supports you and your nutrition does its job to fuel you for your training. Now, obviously, which one of those things is going to work better? Just haphazardly eating whatever, or planning, consuming, and tracking and doing all that with your food? Obviously, the high level performers are going to keep track of what they're doing. Our mental diet is no different. We can approach that from the standpoint of our mental diet is everything that we allow into our mind from the outside, and also everything that we permit to dwell in our mind that we create ourselves internally. If we were going to compare that to our physical diet, external information coming into our mind is like going to a restaurant. You can go and you can order the food, and someone else prepares it for you, and you just eat it. And you have a pretty good idea of what ingredients are being used, but you're not 100% sure, right? And then the internal aspect of a mental diet is, what thoughts am I originating? What am I looking at ideas and then valuing those ideas in such a way that they become a part of my belief system, that I accept this and I consent to this thought. We can consent to or reject any thought that comes to us, whether it's from external or internal. So if we really want to get our mind the way we want it to be, first we have to define how we want it to be, and then we have to identify what is in our mind currently that we don't want to be there, and we replace it. And it's the trip up that a lot of people have is, well, that's just positive thinking, and look at the circumstances around me. My life has all of this stuff going on that these are facts, right? But those facts are there because you've consented to thought processes that put you in that position, right? And your client that you were talking about earlier, she had consented to, I'm an argumentative, troublesome client, and this is how I'm going to act when we get there. Okay, but you did the perfect thing. You didn't feed that. You just said, well, come on in and let's see how it goes. And in the process of seeing how it goes, you showed her that that's not how she has to be, and she picked up on it for herself. You cannot force another person to change their mind that way. They have to be ready to make the change themselves. And so if we look at this mental diet, if we look at the how we should be based on what our friends are telling us, but that's not who we want to be, then let all that other stuff go and construct who you want to be, and build on it from there. The beauty of the theta brainwave thing that I was talking about earlier is, like, if you take a child who's very young and they grow up in a family of people who speak, say, 4 different languages, they will grow up effortlessly speaking all 4 languages as long as they're exposed to it. Now, you take someone like any one of us 4, I don't know if any of you guys are multilingual. I am not. And say, okay, we're gonna go and we're gonna learn at the same time how to speak Spanish, Russian, and French. Go do it all at the same time. You've got a year to get fluent at this. That's going to be a full-time job, right? Because our brains are not in theta absorbing that information the same way it is when we're a child. So knowing that phenomenon exists in the physical realm is awesome. Knowing that as we fall asleep and as we wake up, we pass that state is awesome, because that gives an opportunity to literally go back to the child mind. And instead of just letting our thoughts drift, or instead of dwelling on whatever horrible thing happened today, or whatever terrible thing we're anticipating happening tomorrow, if we construct a vivid scene of what we want to accomplish and who we want to be, and we run that scene as we're falling asleep, we start to reprogram the subconscious mind that way. And it becomes very, very easy and very, very powerful.
I've got a question for you. This was in Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep. And
which I have not read. So
okay, if I think he talks about this similar concept, and I'm going to ask you a specific question in a minute because I know you play guitar. He was saying you if you're trying to learn something or remember something, you can use that. So when you're trying to do something throughout a day and it just frustrates you, but you leave it, you sleep on it, and then the next day it might become easier. Because if that is on your mind while you go to sleep, say, it'll go through your mind. You're trying to learn a process, say, and it'll go through your mind throughout the day really slowly. But when you're asleep, it'll go like, brr, 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 and it just goes through and through and through and through. So if you're trying to learn a song, say, on guitar, and I've done this because I play bass, and you go to bed and you're going over it and over it and over it in your head, and then you try again the next day. It's more often than not, it's easier the next day than it was the day before when you were trying to remember it. And I think that's the same thing. I think that's what you're explaining is you go over this stuff over and over in your head while you're asleep, and it just becomes part of you.
Sure. Yeah, and you're talking about practicing a physical skill when you do that, and it's very effective for that. It is also very effective for non-physical things like believing that you're the kind of person who is worthy of love. Like what a horrible thing to think. That you're not worthy of love. If you can you don't even have to convince yourself of it. If you can create an imaginal scene that implies that, and then fall asleep in that scene, your outlook on those things will change. It's interesting that you bring up playing music as well too, because anyone who plays a guitar or bass or anything like that, especially if you're understand or a fan of rock music, is probably aware of a guitar player from the States named Steve Vai. You know Steve Vai? Okay. He played with David Lee Roth. He played with David Lee Roth in the 80s. He played with Whitesnake in the early 90s. He's been a solo artist, played with Frank Zappa. He is an absolute high-level genius. He's literally, and I'm just putting this together right now. He's one of those guys. He's like to the guitar what Bud Jeffries was to physical stuff. Like he can do everything, right?
My brother had one of the 7-string Ibanez Universes with the little handle,
Yeah, I watched an interview with him a while back and was just blown away by him saying this. He was talking about technique and note selection and that kind of stuff a little bit, but then he started talking about being more expressive with the instrument. And the part that I took away from it is he said, if you can close your eyes and imagine yourself playing something that is beyond your current capabilities, but you can see it, like you look down at your hands and you see your fingers on the fretboard, or you see the pick in your hand. And if you can imagine yourself playing it gracefully and perfectly and fully expressing yourself with it, then you're practicing better that way a lot of times than you are with your hands physically on the instrument. And I'm like, that's exactly what all of these other guys that are in all these other areas are talking about. So he's literally doing imaginal practice. And there's what was the study that Judd I can't pronounce his last name, DeSoto, I forget what his how to pronounce his last name, but he wrote a book called, I'm drawing a blank on that one too. Anyway, I'm referencing the study with the control group was the basketball study.
Oh,
You had 3 groups. You had people that didn't shoot baskets. You had people that practiced shooting baskets for 20 minutes a day or something like that. And then you had people who didn't physically shoot, but they imagined themselves sinking baskets. And the improvement rate between the physical practitioners and the imaginal practitioners was almost the same percentage wise. It was like 23% versus 20% improvement, something like that. That's powerful stuff. And the real thing to understand is there is no off switch to this. Whatever we are allowing into our mind, whatever we consent to, that we feel strongly about, is getting impressed. And our loop that we get stuck in is we do things that reflect what we believe to be true and get more of the same result. And we're like, see, there it is. These are facts, but we can change that.
I'm working on at the moment in one arm press ups for this course. So I'm really, working on the progressions and trying to get stronger. And sometimes I dream at night, and I have a dream that I can go down and I can just do them really, really well, you know. And then you wake up the next day and you kind of think, did I dream that, or can I do that, or can I? You seem, like you say, the dreams seem so vividly real that because I'm in the same environment doing it, but I just go there and I can do it. And I wonder if that's actually.
I had the opposite kind of dreams when particularly between the ages of about 17 and 23, I hadn't driven a car in about 6 years, and then I had to get on. And then I was managing this band, and then they just bought this van. It was like £100, this old Mercedes van, and they said, "Well, you're the manager now. You've got to drive this." And I hadn't driven, but for 6 years previously, I had this recurring nightmare that every time I got in the car, that I would just get in there and I would be unable to control it in any way, but have my foot properly on the accelerator. And so I would just zoom off all the way around. So that was what I was going through my head when I got into this kind of 2-ton Mercedes van that's about 40 years old. Eventually I did get the hang of it, but I did hit a few things on the way before I got good at it.
Mate. Dave, I was going to say I'm not actually going to start, I don't think, at the moment, because we're coming up to the end of our time, and I don't want to. I've mentioned Wim Hof beforehand, but I think it would do it a disservice actually to start with only a few minutes left. I mean, we can tell. I'm not sure. I think maybe if sometime in the future we can get you on and actually do a proper discussion about, you know, Wim Hof and the Wim Hof system and your history with it. And I know you were one of the first people, you know, to get, certainly in America, to go through the kind of training for the Wim Hof system. But I think probably to try and just kind of shoehorn something into 5 minutes wouldn't really do it justice, or what it.
We could have a go. Can you explain Wim Hof life work in 5 minutes? No.
I don't know.
I can give you an overview of it, and I can also.
If you could give us an overview, that would be brilliant, and we'll maybe talk in depth another time. But so I know you've got you can explain, because I know that you did the Wim Hof training a number of years ago, and one of the first people to get on board, certainly in the States, and you've got some workshops coming up and things. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience with Wim Hof and what it is?
Sure. I'll start with the workshop thing. February 5th and 6th in Nashville, Tennessee, my hometown. Myself and another Wim Hof method instructor named Jesse Coomer, who got certified at the same event that I got certified at. So we're both in that group, the first 27 or 28 people in the States to get certified, which was a phenomenal experience. We're going to be teaching 2-day workshop. Day 1 is fundamentals. Day 2 is advanced. We're going to be covering the 3 pillars of the Wim Hof method, which are cold exposure, breathing, and mindset, commitment, mental focus stuff. Those 3 points to Wim Hof are that's the core essence of it. And for the uninitiated, you see Wim, or you see one of the instructors. And if you don't know about Wim Hof, I could go on and on about the man himself and his feats. He is amazing. Just Google him and go find the videos on YouTube of him swimming amongst glaciers. It's gorgeously shot. I think it was actually on a BBC show, but I may be wrong. It's like way up north, glaciers around him, swimming in that water and talking about, I don't feel the cold, I feel the power, which is, kind of sums it all up. If the uninitiated person sees that, or sees someone like myself or Jesse or another instructor, or someone who's just really into it, doing some of the silly stuff that we do. I posted stuff on social media a couple of weeks ago when we got one of our rare Tennessee snowfalls of myself and my son sled riding down a hill. I'm wearing shorts. He's all bundled up. And it's funny because my wife posted it on her stuff and got multiple comments about how I was going to get hypothermia, I was going to get frostbite, I was going to get sick and die, all this kind of stuff. And like, you're completely missing the point. The reason cold exposure is so powerful, and heat exposure too, is because as civilized beings, we have evolved into a place, use it or lose it kind of thing, that the vast majority of our time, I don't do Celsius conversions very well for my European friends, so I'm going to speak in Fahrenheit here. Very rarely do we go below 67 degrees Fahrenheit or above 72, 73 degrees Fahrenheit. So there's that narrow little window that we exist in, and our ability to to withstand that and thrive in that is much like an unused muscle for someone who's sitting on the couch and never done any strength training. They could become phenomenally stronger than they are, but it's going to take some exposure to a specific stimulus. The stimulus in this case being cold. The more cold exposure we can acclimate our bodies to, the better an effect it has on our system overall. It helps us to all of these things work in conjunction to do this, but it helps us to boost the immune system, which in this day and age, who isn't interested in having a strong immune system, right? With everything that's going on in the world. So the cold exposure, that is the main reason for it. And when I see people who come in and like, raw, cold exposure, I'm hard, you're going to die if you do that. That's the thing about it. Like if you go to the gym and you like try to push yourself past your limits and all of that kind of silly stuff, you might get hurt in the gym. You might, pull a muscle or tweak a tendon or whatever. If you do that with the cold, you'll die. Pure and simple. It can kill you. Very rarely does anybody die in the gym from going too hard, but someone stays in the cold a little bit too long. And the trick about it is once you're in it and it gets in you, that's what Wim says, is get in it and then get out of it before it gets in you. It starts to, you don't feel cold anymore. You start to feel just kind of relaxed and euphoric, and I'm just going to lay down and take a nap. And that's how people die from hypothermia, right? So the cold training aspect is critical for Wim Hof, but I do it in a very logical, systematic, individualized, progressive way. The other pillar that involves physical activity is the breath work. And the cool thing about the Wim Hof breath work is that it cuts away so much of the esoteric and woo-woo stuff, because Wim, having done this himself for decades, thought, I want to set all of the spiritual woo-woo stuff aside and just let science take a hard science look at what's going on physiologically. And what he found out was that the breathing exercises change the body's pH from alkaline or from acidic to alkaline. And a tremendous amount of the diseases and problems that we have as a result of modern society just simply can't thrive or even exist in some cases in a highly alkaline environment. So we can literally consciously boost our immune system through breathing and through focusing our mind. And of course, the mindset aspect of all that is the ability to be truly disciplined. What do I mean by discipline? Discipline doesn't mean beating the shit out of yourself. Discipline is simply, I give myself an order and then I follow that order. And so if I give myself an order that I'm going to do a round of Wim Hof breathing that involves taking 30 deep breaths that look like this, well, it doesn't seem like much, but when you get to about 14 or 15, you start to get a little bit tired and you start to get a little bit like, I'm close enough, I'll go ahead and stop. But if you made the commitment to yourself to get to 30, follow through on that commitment. And the cool thing about it, each time you do that with something that is as simple and easy to perform as breathing, you give yourself a little win check mark. You give yourself a reminder that you accomplished something that you wanted to give up on or that you wanted to stop. And so every breathing session can become that. And I think that the effects that has on a person's psyche is incredible. Another thing that I am experimenting with a lot right now, and I don't really have any hard science to back this up, but I'm not a hard science guy. I am this is my experience. Let's see if you had the same experience, guy. And I don't care what science says. Again, salute to Bud Jeffries for the whole bumblebee attitude, right? I want to do this. You can't do that. Maybe not. Let's wait until after I've given an attempt. Don't be that person who says that you can't do that to the other person who's already doing it, right? The thing that I'm very interested in terms of breath work in general, but since Wim Hof is such a fast track way to get to these altered mental states that you can have, is the effect that the breath work has on our brainwaves. Because what I'm finding is, again, I don't have hard science to back this up, but what I'm finding is based on my own experience and the way that I'm feeling when I'm doing this stuff, that the feeling of being in that theta state is something that I experience when I'm doing the breath work. So logically, if I can access theta brainwave state through breathing exercises as part of meditation, hypnosis, or whatever, can I breathe my way into that state that the clutter is out of the way subconscious is there, I can take the idea that I want to impress and just impress it, and not have all the other bullshit getting in the way, not having my conscious mind and my ego trying to talk me out of it or telling me that it's something that can't be done. It sets all that stuff away. As the body becomes immobilized, the extra thoughts in the mind that tend to block us kind of go out of the way a little bit. And if I can imagine myself vividly doing it, even if I can imagine myself vividly doing it while I'm in that theta state, even if it's contrary to my belief system, it's being impressed on the subconscious mind anyway, because those beliefs I'm not giving them any attention. So they will start to wilt and die from lack of nurturing and lack of nutrition as I feed the ideal that I want to realize. I said a lot of things. I hope that made sense.
No, that's 8 minutes of Wim Hof, which is fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Dave. I mean, if I know we've had the first podcast with you as well, but for people, hopefully they have gone back and listened to the first one and listened to this one as well. But if people want to, to follow you and find out more about what you do and follow what you do with your coaching, with your, everything you've got going on and your Wim Hof stuff, what's the best platform for people to do that on?
The best place to find out more about the coaching is to go to superhumanyoucoaching.com. And there's a presentation on there that they can watch that will guide them through several of the points that I've talked about today in a little bit more detail. If you're in the US, this only applies to people in the continental US, and you want a copy of my book, Superhuman You, which, I've got a copy of it sitting right here. If you want a copy of this book's Superhuman You, I send those out for free. I ask that whoever is getting it pay for shipping and handling, which is like $10. So you can go to superhumanyoubook.com if you're in the continental US, and I'll send you a free copy of the book. And that's that book is an overview of part of my path that I went on. It happened before I did the training with Wim Hof himself. I had been experimenting with it, but didn't feel qualified to speak on it in a book at that point. So Superhuman You Coaching, superhumanyoubook.com are the two main places to go. If you want to see like videos of me on stage and like see my performing strongman keynote speaker stuff, go to irontamer.com. And then on any and all social media platforms, if you look for Iron Tamer, that's me. I say any and all. There's some that I'm not on, like I'm not on Snapchat or anything like that, but Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, I'm Iron Tamer on all those things.
Excellent. Pete, do you have anything you'd like to say in conclusion, or any final thoughts at all?
Well, number one, I'm going to have to go and listen to this again because there's loads in there. Honestly, I love this stuff because it makes you think, and it makes you want to go away and work on yourself, which is really hard to do. And there was one thing that you said earlier when
I'm going to interrupt you. Hang on to your thought. You just said that it makes you want to do it, but it's really hard to do. Is that just a narrative that you're telling yourself?
Well, yes. And
because I literally just outlined how to make it easy.
Yeah, no, I know exactly. But yes.
Now that I've completely disrupted you and called you out, please finish your thought.
Yeah, but it's when someone says like that, what I've just said, it's like, yeah, but that's a thought that you're thinking all the bloody time. So just change that, and then it'll change the process. And that's the thing. And that takes a little bit of time and a little bit of effort, but then once you've done it, it becomes the normal, doesn't it? So yeah, so there was that. Also, cold exposure. I don't necessarily do it, but I do live in a 250-year-old building where none of the windows and doors fit, and it's not that warm over here at the minute. So I kind of get it daily, and I work outside. And then the last one was the thing you said about people who jump into cold exposure. It made me think of Bud Jeffries again, because there was a video of him I saw today of him lifting a trailer. He's got the trailer on his like a lorry trailer on his back, and he's kind of doing he's doing calf raises or something. He's like lifting it up.
But that particular lift is called a back lift, and it's set up in such a way that you're able to drive with you have your back the entirety of your back flat against the platform.
Yeah.
Old timers used to build various platforms to do it. Bud just thought it would be easier to use that trailer. And you have you drive with your legs, but you also have the apparatus set up so that you can push with your arms. So it's literally pushing with all four limbs against this ponderous weight. And the idea is just to break it off the support so that you can see daylight through it. And that's what Bud's doing with that truck.
But when you see it, for people who go and find this, when you said cold exposure, if you jump in and it's freezing and you're like, yeah, come on, and that can kill you. That's kind of tantamount to just going and sticking yourself under one of these things and going, I'm going to lift that.
Yeah.
That's what came to my mind anyway.
Paul, do you have anything you'd like to say to finish?
Well, I think I've got two things really. The first one is it's like my equivalent, I suppose, looking back on it, is an equivalent tribute to Bud. Yesterday, I was just doing some max testing with one of my instructors, and because he's doing the Amazing 12 from next week, and one of my clients walks in saying her car's stuck into another car, and the back wheel of one car was stuck into the front wheel of my client's car, and so me and my trainer had to go out and try and lift this car up in order to move it. Oh my God, modern cars are so heavy. So Bud is a machine. I don't know how, when I see people like Bud doing things and making it look easy, we had to get 4 people to try and even budget a couple of inches. It was a mini as well, but it was one of the modern minis, which is massively heavy, so it's not one of the old style ones. The amount of power that guy had is crazy when you actually start to do these feats of strength. And then the second one is, I think last 2 years, it's been very easy to start. It's taken its toll on a lot of people, and it's very easy to think of, to speak in negative ways, to have a lot of anxiety that it carries with you in not only in social interactions because of COVID, but also into the stress it's put into work. And I think what's a pleasure talking to you, Dave, is that there are people out there, for anyone listening who is going through a lot of stress and stuff, who can help you start building the structures around you and the mindset that will allow you to thrive, because there's always a way of thriving. And often it's just about trying to work it out and find people. And sometimes it just takes finding someone who can articulate what success would look like and what that path would look like. You can do it physically, but you can do it mentally as well. And I think it's always a pleasure talking to you, Dave, because you are very articulate around these really difficult concepts, very emotional concepts, very kind of intangibles. And that's why it's always a pleasure to hear you speak.
Thank you very much for saying that. Yeah. The past couple of years have been a trying couple of years for sure. A lot of stuff that 3 years ago that would have been completely unimaginable has happened and is old news now, but to that point, it's very, very easy to get caught up in the current of complaining and being frustrated and worrying about things, but understanding that every moment that we spend complaining about something is a moment that we spend not being grateful for something else that's going on. With a small child, every moment that you or I spend complaining about what's going on in the world is a moment that we're not wallowing in that a 2 or 3 year old child can bring into our lives, and every moment that we spend worrying. I've heard it put this way. I don't remember where I heard this. I did not come up with it. I wish that I had come up with this, because I think it's absolutely brilliant in its elegance and its power, is that worrying about something is literally praying for something that you do not want.
Yeah.
So every moment that we spend worrying about what might happen in the future is a moment that we lose in constructing in our own mind what we do want to happen in the future.
Yeah. And I think there's one as well that's it was saying from somebody, he said, I spent most of my life worrying about things, most of which never happened.
Yeah.
You're just constantly worrying about the potential of something, what's going to go wrong next, what's going to, what's bad's going to happen. And most of the time, like we all know, you worry about things, and the reality that actually comes out is nowhere near as bad as the thing you were worrying about in the first place. So
that goes with that 4 agreements thing of don't make assumptions, because if you're worrying about something, you make an assumption of something that's probably not going to happen.
Truly. And I don't have any science to back this up again, but I'm of the opinion that we as a species gravitate toward negative thinking because that is what allowed us to evolve into our position on the planet. We were smart enough to know that if we go over there, we're going to get eaten, and if we go over there, we're going to fall off that cliff. And so from a very primitive standpoint, we evolved our consciousness to be very aware of danger, to avoid danger, to propagate the species. But if we fast forward to now, very few humans on the planet are ever actually in tremendous physical danger from something that's happening externally. I mean, I know that there's bad neighborhoods, and then there's, like situations of unrest and civil unrest in various countries all over the world, and that everyone has their moment of that, but by and large most of us are never in any real danger. So our program deep into our DNA is this hypervigilance of what's going to try to kill me in the next 2 minutes. And if we don't have an actual threat, we will create one, and it winds up being, somebody said something mean about someone on the internet, and I think they were talking about me, so I'm going to get bent out of shape about it and let it ruin the rest of my day. You literally just let someone else on the internet that you may have never even met in person control your mind if you did that. And you have sovereign control over your mind, and you can either hand that off to someone else or you can hang on to it for yourself. So every time, and I'm not infallible, I'm human, I'm not perfect, I experience these things on a day-to-day basis, just like everyone else. Something pops up in my feed, it rubs me the wrong way. And I'm going to go comment and tell this guy, but how many times has anyone ever said, you know what, I'm going to completely change my belief system and my position politically, religiously, about food, about exercise, because this one person on the internet commented on my stuff that I was wrong? It just doesn't happen. It's a futile thing. It's literally trying to hold back the ocean with a broom. So just don't do it. Don't participate in that. And the more you do that, the more you find that your mental diet is improving, that your self-image is improving, your self-confidence improving, and by extension, your life is improving. So be kind to yourself.
Dave, that is an absolutely brilliant place to wrap up. That was a great kind of final thought there that I think everyone can take away something from. Thank you so much for coming in and joining us again, Dave. So thank you very much, guys, for listening as always, and please do share, like, subscribe. If you're listening on a platform that allows you to leave a review, please do leave a review. If you'd like to join the Facebook group, just go onto Facebook, searching Groups Health Oddity, and join there, and we will see you in there. Remember to check out Iron Tamer on social media, to check out superhumanu.com or superhumanubook.com, coaching.com.
Superhumanucoaching.com. Superhumanu.com is parked somewhere and
okay. Yeah, superhumanucoaching.com or superhumanubook.com to get the book if you're in the US. Thank you so much, Dave, Iron Tamer, and we will see you all again next week. Take care.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.